Welcome, everyone. If you feel like you are communicating, but at the same time, sometimes you're not being heard, maybe by your colleagues, maybe by leaders, how can you communicate in a way to get your voice heard and get them to really understand your ideas and really what you're talking about? Today, I'm here with Donna Rubin, who is the author of Speaking While Female, and we're going to dive into this topic a lot more. First of all, Donna, thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, Kit. I'm delighted to be here.
And Donna, if our audience have not had a chance to meet you yet, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am based in the New York area and I'm on my third career. I started out as a journalist, did that for quite a long time, newspapers, magazines, television. And then I was a speechwriter. I still write the occasional speech, but now I've moved into another area, which is a focus on women's speech and developing underrepresented voices all across the spectrum. So I basically help organizations develop their talent, their employees to use their voices more powerfully and effectively within the organization.
So Donna, you were talking about, I'm just using the word underrepresented voices. What does that mean for you?
Well, every organization has certain ideas, certain voices that are mainstreamed, right? But organizations benefit, we all know, benefit from diversity of points of view, from hearing from everyone, getting everyone's intelligence, everyone's life experience, everyone's perspective into the mix so they can come up with the best strategies, the best solutions, the best approaches. But in many, if not most organizations, the people who are not well represented feel somewhat uncomfortable putting their voices out there. Maybe they feel they won't be respected. Maybe they feel they're going to threaten their livelihood or their job security. Maybe they feel that they're not very smart and they're not confident about their ideas. But it turns out that employee voice, the value of employee voice is widely recognized and becoming even more so. More and more employers are understanding that in order to be effective, they need to have everybody's voices in the mix.
Got it. So if I'm someone that's feeling this way now in an organization, what can I do? I mean, like, Donna, I'm listening to you right now. Like, you're speaking to me. I am in this situation right now. I need some help. What do I need to know? What do I need to ask? What's next?
Well, in a way, Kit, it's not that different from the kind of advice that you would give to anybody who's insecure or uncertain or not comfortable speaking up. The first thing is to know, what is it you want to say? What message or content do you want to put into the organization? What is your expertise? Everybody has expertise. Some people are intimidated by the word expertise. They think, I'm not an expert. Believe me, I've worked with people who have PhDs and have written 3 books and don't like to call themselves an expert. But everybody has knowledge, everybody has experience that is valuable to the organization. So the first step is really recognizing that, saying to yourself in your own head, yeah, my material, my information, my perspective is valuable. That's what I think of as the mindset. So you have to have a kind of mindset to appreciate that your knowledge is valuable. And once you internalize that and feel strong in that, then it becomes easier to take the next step, which is figuring out how to package what you want to say. Do you want to use your voice in terms of actually speaking? Do you want to speak up more in meetings? Do you want to speak at town halls, on the internet? Do you want to put your actual voice into the mix? And I encourage everybody to do that. Or another way is to write. You can write as well. You can express your experience or your point of view through writing and through speaking. Those are the 2 main ways. And since we're here talking about to a speaking audience, since your experience is speaking, I'll focus on that. So we talked about the mindset. Now we'll shift into the skill set. How do you choose which venues to speak at? What's the best place to speak? How do you make sure the right people in your organization hear you or know about it? After you've spoken, do the right people understand that you're putting your knowledge and expertise into the organization in that way? How do you frame your expertise? I mean, there's a whole lot of questions around. I mean, you can't just raise your hand and talk, at a meeting without giving it forethought. What do you want to be known for? Who do you want to hear about it? What kind of impact do you want to make? And how do you follow up? I mean, so it's not just one instance, but it's a number of instances that combine to create your visible profile, your leader, your profile as someone who is valuable and worth listening to.
So I want to touch back upon when you were talking about the mindset, right? One of the things you were saying was that to really internalize, I have something of value to offer. Not in your exact words, but before we go into that, why would someone think or say to themselves that they don't maybe have that value to offer?
Well, there's as many different reasons as there are people, on the planet. People are insecure in all kinds of ways. People have been told that they're not valuable. People have not been listened to. Maybe they were a young person just out of school, starting out in an organization and weren't respected. I don't know. There's a whole lot of reasons why people don't feel inside themselves that they have value, and I'm not a psychologist. I'm nobody's shrink, but I am a coach in the sense that I encourage people to recognize that they have a voice that matters and that they can fashion a strong voice. But not everybody, it doesn't come native to everybody. I mean, let's face it, there's a lot of diversity in the world. Some people are seemingly born with the ability to speak out with confidence. I coach and judge high school debate, and I'm a big believer in high school debate because those kids who go through debate programs, they might start out timid and uncertain, and they learn through experience. You know the value of experience, just standing up and doing it over and over, and they emerge. You could take the most quiet, timid student and put them through a semester of debate, and at the end of the semester, there they are arguing for the affirmative in one debate, and then turning around and arguing the negative. So arguing both positions of a debate. So, people learn by doing. People learn by doing. And so I really encourage everybody to think carefully about what they want to say and then just do it. Get out there and do it.
You said think carefully about what to say. Well, what if we don't think carefully about what to say? Why can't we just, I'm playing devil's advocate here. And earlier, I think you mentioned this a little bit too. It's kind of like revolved about think before what you have to say. Don't just blurt it out in a way. Why can't we just speak on the top of our minds when a thought comes in?
Well, to be clear, I'm talking about a work landscape. I'm not talking about in the rest of your life. When you're with your colleague, when you're with your friends, when you're maybe in your house of worship in a religious context, when you're in a club, maybe in a social setting, you don't always have to think about what you want to say. That would be quite awkward and quite laborious and quite uncomfortable. But in a work environment, everything we do matters. We're always being watched. That's not always an easy lesson to absorb and to learn, but everything we do and say matters. And if we want to be taken seriously and we want our issues to be taken seriously, if we want to make changes within the organization, we have to be strategic. We have to be strategic about and we can't change everything. No person can change everything. So do you want to speak out about employee relations, some aspect of human resources? Do you want to speak out about processes, about strategies within the organization? Do you want to speak, or technology? I mean, there's a myriad different ways that you can put your voice into that environment. So you have to think ahead. What is it you want to talk about, and what do you want to be known for? What are your strengths? What is it you can speak about with confidence and authority and authenticity? And it's not everything. So we each have to make choices about what we want to be known for.
So how do we draw the line between being strategic and being human?
That's a lifelong quest.
Yeah. because at one point, right? Let's say we write down the perfect thing to say or the best way to say it, but at the same time, why can't we just say what we want to say?
Well, to be clear, I'm really not talking about being mechanical. You know, I tell you, I have a best friend, and I always share these with my clients and when I lead workshops. It's called card. What do you call this? An index card.
Index
Some of
card.
them are lined, some of them are plain. And I always encourage people to write down their thoughts on the index card. Make them, like, if you need to, make long sentences, and then take another index card and throw the first one away and condense them. Make them shorter, make them into bullet points, throw that one away and make it, create another one. These are cheap. You can buy a pack of index cards for $1.37 in the drugstore. So write down the bullet points, write down the themes. And then if you need to, you can glance at them while you're speaking, or you can just review them and have them in your head. It's like a mnemonic device. But your question is, why is it necessary to plan ahead, and are we at risk of sounding mechanical? I never, ever, ever encourage people to read or to memorize. I think that is the surest way to sound mechanical, or to enter the uncanny valley where you sound kind of robotic and make people uncomfortable who are listening to you. I want people to speak freshly and authentically and be human and use the whole range of hand expressions and face expressions and idiosyncratic aspects to their personal style and delivery. But at the same time, I want people to be very focused and clear about what it is they want to say. And that's why I find index cards so helpful as a tool.
That's great. Donna, I'm interested in your book, Speaking While Female.
My favorite topic.
Yeah. So what's that about?
Well, I mentioned that I was a speechwriter and for a long time. And as a speechwriter, I also continue to this day to judge speechwriting contests. Every year there's a global speechwriting contest. And I guess I've been doing it about 10 years. And about, 6, 7, 8 years ago, I started getting fed up because I noticed that speeches were constantly quoting Winston Churchill. I mean, all the time. I'm not kidding. All the time. And of course, we know, by the way, most of the times when people quote Winston Churchill, he didn't actually say that. You can Google that. There's a lot that's written about that. But in any case, he was a fantastic orator. He was a great statesman, the leader of World War II in many ways. I revere his public speaking, his command and authority, but by far he was not the only speaker who's worth noting or quoting or being aware of. So I started thinking about that question about Winston Churchill, and then I started noticing that it was along those lines, mostly men who we associate with public speaking. And I'm talking about people like Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King Jr., Frederick Douglass, Billy Graham, Robert F. Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, Ronald Reagan, who was the great communicator. I mean, I do this all the time, so I can tell you, if you take a group of people, like when I give speeches or when I lead workshops, and just say, name some of the great speakers in history, I usually try and say not living. That forces people to think, to cast their thoughts backwards a little bit. They'll almost always mention men. Almost always. If they mention a woman, there's like a handful of women that will come up, but usually if they mention a woman, it's a Michelle Obama or Hillary Clinton. Maybe they'll say Sojourner Truth or Elizabeth Cady Stanton or Susan B. Anthony, but people just don't know about women speakers. So I got interested, and then I got obsessed. That's my personality. And I started looking at speech anthologies, collections of speeches. And I really did a deep dive. I mean, a profoundly deep dive. I started buying them on the internet and Kindle and going to the library. And I looked at, I think 250 of them, 280 of them, something like that. And I put them all together on an infographic that everybody can look at. And on that it's online at speakingwhilefemale.co. And on that infographic, you can look at it at a glance and just see how the history of speech the history of oratory or public speaking has been presented or captured as an endeavor by men. So if you look at those books, and of course the history books, and all our history classes, that we've all been taught that men were the great speakers in history, and it's just not true. It's simply not true. So I got really mad about that. I thought, why have we been taught the wrong history? And how harmful that is to women who need role models and want to know that women can speak strong too. So I created two things. One is the website, speakingwhilefemale.co, and that's where I just started throwing on hundreds and hundreds and thousands of speeches by women. All your listeners and your audience can go see those speeches and showing that women have been speaking. And then I created the book. So the book is an outgrowth of the online speech archive.
So based on all the work that you've done, were there differences between how women spoke or showed up or different ways than men? Like if there were differences of
Yeah, I actually get asked that question a lot. I would say the answer is yes and no. Yes, in that women spoke about different things. So women, for most of our history, and that includes American history, but for most of our history in general, women have been restricted to certain roles, domestic roles, more private roles. Women were not allowed to speak in public. They were discouraged from speaking in public. They weren't allowed to be ministers or religious leaders in most denominations. It's only really in the last 150 years that women have been speaking with any kind of frequency. So that means, and even so, women were not, for the most part, they weren't in parliament, they weren't legislators, they weren't constitutional experts, they weren't judges, and not even that many lawyers. So women tended to speak about different things. They spoke about domestic matters, they spoke about education and children, they talk about healthcare, they talked about moving into the Victorian era. Women spoke about reform, prison reform, sanitary conditions, but you didn't find women speaking about large geopolitical issues or legislative issues until more recently. So in that sense, there is a difference in content. Yes, women and men over the span of history have spoken about different things. But if you're asking about communication style, I personally have not seen a definitive difference between how women and men communicate. Women speak just as powerfully, just as persuasively, packing their speeches with just as much evidence, fact and evidence-based argumentation, just as rigorously as men. And those are the stereotypes. We generally think women are more emotional, women are less anchored in fact and evidence, but I don't find a basis for any of that. I don't. And I find women, by the way, just as humorous as men. One of the main jabs against women is that they're not humorous, they're not funny, but it's really not true. So anybody who thinks those things should take a stroll through speakingwhilefemale.co and look at how women have expressed themselves through the centuries.
That's great. I got one last, yes.
And by the way, I just want to point out that when I talk about speaking in public, I'm talking about speeches and addresses, lectures. I'm also talking about testimony in courtrooms. I'm talking about sermons in a house of worship. I'm talking about even eulogies, for the deceased. I mean, there's a whole span of ways that women have spoken, have put their voice into the public realm. And so there's no one way to describe what woman's voice is like. It's like everything.
Yeah. Well, Donna, as we wrap up, what's one final message that you want to give to our audience?
I want people to know that their voice matters. And there's a lot of different ways to think about this, but lately there have been so many global issues that have been capturing my attention. So many powerful problems that we face in the world, warfare, climate problems of conflicts. And I think, how are we ever going to make progress as a species if we don't benefit from the best ideas. And this applies to, as we were talking earlier, it applies to companies, it applies to every forum, every public forum where human beings operate. We need the best ideas. And that includes everybody's voices. We can't afford to make decisions based on a very narrow strata of expertise. So I want people to remember that their voice, their experience matters, and to get the training, get the confidence, get the experience it takes to put your ideas and information into the world.
And Donna, if people are loving what you're saying, where's the best place to connect with you and also get the book as well?
Well, one place, speakingwhilefemale.co. I don't own the .com. I've been trying to get it for a long time. The person who owns it hasn't given it to me yet. But speakingwhilefemale.co has everything you need. You'll find there the speech archive. You'll find the infographic that I mentioned. You'll find information about the book and my email.
Okay. Well, Donna, I want to say thank you once again for sharing your experience, thoughts, and tips with us today. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It's really been a pleasure.
Okay. We'll see you all next time. Thank you, everyone.